So good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Biz Talk. My name is Ade Shakoya, and let me start off first of all by saying apologies for the late start, having a few technical issues. Still waiting for the guest who's going to be joining us shortly to speak about how to boost your productivity, bring your life and your health back into optimum. Actually, as we're speaking right now, here comes the man himself. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today. So apologies for that. But before we get into that, ladies and gentlemen, let me present you with this. So there you go. That's the Unfair Business Advantage Virtual Summit. So that basically means it's online. You don't need to leave your house. You don't need to worry about catching no train, no plane, or anything. Online summit, free places, and you're going to get the opportunity to come and hear some very experienced business experts come and talking about the things that you need to know about doing business, starting a business, and scaling a business in the current climate. I don't need to tell you. You know it. I know it. Everybody knows it, that the world has gone through significant change over the last, year and a bit? Nearly 2 years now. See, it's all morphing into something. It's hard to tell the difference in time no more. And we all know that that's had a big impact on how we live, how we work, how we socialize, how we buy stuff, but also in terms of business, right? So this is going to be one of the biggest changes that we have seen in a long time. And it makes sense to come and learn about some of the things that you need to be taking into consideration. So all you got to do to get your free place is just head on over here. So head on over to summit@adeshakoya.com, get yourself a free spot and come and listen to how you can make a difference in your own life. But enough about that. So like I said, I'm blessed right now to have a guest on the show, Albert, who's going to be talking to us about health. And also the key thing is about technology that they use, which within under 8 minutes can scan and tell you all the things within your body that you need to start looking at or taking care of. But as this is a very solution-focused organization as well, not just, hey, here's what the problem is, but here's what the treatment looks like. And here's the context. Here's how it came about. I've got 3 boys, as many of you know. One of my sons for many years has been having a few health issues stomach-wise. He's been through numerous blood tests, urine tests, stool tests, you name it. And they've never been able to find anything, but it hasn't stopped the fact that the problems still persist. Recently, Brother Davis Davis, you'll know from Manhood Academy Global. So shout out to Davis. Put me in contact with this brother here. And he came along, done the scan in 8 minutes, was able to put out a report which really clearly showed what was up, but more importantly, how to go about addressing that. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to today's guest, which is Albert. Hey, Albert, and thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. What's up, brother?
I'm blessed and highly favored.
Come on, that's what I'm talking about.
There you go, brother, man. That's how it is. But before we get into it as well, can you just take a quick moment and introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, great. My name's Albert Johnson. I'm a transitional coach. And what that means is I support people from getting where they are and going to where they deserve to be. And the reason why I termed it as a transitional coach is because within this area of like self-development, health, holistic health, there's all different titles, but ultimately what we are doing as practitioners, we're taking people from where they are to where they actually know they deserve to be, and also where they want to be as well. And that includes transformational coaching, nutritional coaching as well as lifestyle adjustment, dietary adjustment as well.
Awesome, great stuff. So as we start getting into this conversation, tell us a little bit about your company. So you're the CEO of Vitavation,
Yes, yes.
Vitavation, all right? And so tell us a bit more about that company and why you ventured into that industry, or into the health
Cool.
industry.
So how it started for me is I remember I was about 17 and I just remember noticing a lot of elders in the community. And you know, when you're 17 and elders 40, 45, and so on and so forth, that's changed for me now. And elders like 80 and them years. As I get older, I'm pushing it up and up and up and up and up and up. But yeah, I just noticed that a lot
Bruv,
of,
you know what? I hear you, man. One of my
yeah,
sons the other day, he's like, what is it? He's just messing. Well, I hope he was messing with me. He's like, you're old. He just said it like flat, like a statement.
right. Boy. I mean, you know, the young people, bro, and it's interesting to say young people, you know, because I still classify myself as young. But anyway, they are straight to the point, cutthroat, honest, and authentic. Now, when I tell, like the other day, I went to my niece's 21st, and you know, they were dancing in it, so I tried to join in, you know, and do the fling the shoulder. And my nieces, they all looked at me like, "What you doing?" Yeah, I'm saying, where you learn that from? I was like, you don't know. Like, I'm a dancer, you know. I'm a dancer. So anyway, I was 17 and I noticed that a lot of the people in the community specifically will get to about 35 and 40, that bracket there, and then they're beset with illnesses and diseases. And I noticed that pattern was consistent over and over and over. And kind of closer to home, I noticed it in my family, you
Okay.
know, and my father had diabetes, my mum had high blood pressure. Now, diabetes and high blood pressure, they're symptoms. You know, there's many causes that I can actually attribute and then develop into those conditions. However, we're in a society and we're in a paradigm, which is a mindset that deals with symptoms. It's called like, and instead of actually harnessing or even going through the process to get to the cause, which will then start to heal or eradicate the symptoms, we just stay in the symptoms. And when we stay in the symptoms, you start treating symptoms, you'll never get into the cause, and the cause will just redeposit itself. So anyway, I noticed, I was like, well, why is all the people in the community at a certain age getting sick? There was only a few. And when I'm talking to people, it was either they're popping paracetamols, ibuprofen, all these things were very synonymous, you know what I'm saying, with the community and was in my vocabulary. And I was like, what's going on? So I started asking more questions. And then the only thing I got to was lifestyle. And then as I started asking more questions, I then realized that, oh, the lifestyles that we're currently engaging in is a survival lifestyle. You know, a lot of us don't actually even remember or have any type of recollection of what our original lifestyle was in terms of culture. You know, so for example, where my mum and dad are from, they eat cow foot, they eat pig foot, like a lot of West African countries and Caribbean countries. And I was like, if you had a choice, would you go for the foot of a pig or the foot of a cow? If you had the choice. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't taste sweet, yeah, when you season it up with salt and seasonal and Maggi cubes and all of that stuff there. But if you had a choice, would you go for that? So as I started asking these questions, the answers started coming. I started doing research and I realized, oh, okay, the food industry is set up in a certain way to make sure that people progressively get ill. And then what happens, that then supports the medical industry and it's business. You know, if you've got a customer and you solve all your customers' problems, they're never coming back to you. Now, if that customer doesn't come back, you're not going to repeat sales. And if we know anything about business, people focus on lifetime value of a customer. So I started understanding that in the community, our lifestyles, you know, in terms of our dietary habits, the way we sleep, all these just different habits are contributing to these diseases that then take shape or take form or manifest between ages like 35 and 45. Then what I also noticed is like, oh, it didn't start at 35 or 45 or 50. This has been going on from since we were children. And there's a term called nutricide. And what nutricide means is disease, death, deterioration based on malnutrition. And when you're dealing with malnutrition, there's two extremes. People usually think malnutrition is like if you are anorexic or bulimic, and that's not true. You've sides of malnutrition. You've got where you could be emaciated, meaning you're lacking nourishment and you're extremely slim, or you're extremely skinny. However, you've got the other side where you're lacking nourishment and you're inflamed. So you put on weight. So anyway, I started asking those questions and then these answers started coming. So I said, well, if I do the same thing as what my parents have done, as what my grandparents have done, I am actually going to befall the same fate. Why? Because I have something called DNA or genes, or I have a pattern that I've inherited. So I just started asking questions. And once I asked this question, I read a and the book that I read was from an amazing naturopath called Dr. Layla Africa, and it's called Nutricide. You know, the book is quite hard hitting, you know, and I know people have different opinions, but actually everything in the book is based on facts. He was just breaking down the food industry, breaking down the medical industry. And I was like, look, if I don't find another way, then I'm going to befall the same fate. And then that's what led me down the path of changing my diet. So I got into plant-based veganism. I never knew that I was going to become a vegan or become plant-based. I'm telling you, when it came to chicken, when it came to, mostly chicken, actually. I was going to start talking about other meat, but chicken was my favorite. When it came to chicken, I would wax that off, like wax it off. I could eat chicken for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. When it came to rice, I would wax it off. And then one of my favorite things, I had a sweet tooth. And everyone talks about having a sweet tooth. I had a sweet tooth. Growing up, if the drink didn't taste good, I'll just pour sugar in it. And people are like, how would you do that? But that's what I learned, because I know sugar made everything taste better. So I never knew I was going to be here. However, if I didn't come down this path, I probably wouldn't even be talking to you today, because when I was young, I had all high blood pressure and it was seen as normal, but actually I was in a state of nutricide from the age of 10. So yeah, that's how I got here, changed my diet, went plant-based and became raw food for about 10, 12 years. And then I started discovering other avenues and other approaches to health, because health is very specific to the individual. That's the thing. We think there's one size fits all, but how can that be? When you look out in nature, every plant is different. Even if you don't have the eyes or you don't have the sensitivity to be able to notice the small nuances between plants, it doesn't mean they're not different. They have their own signature, just the same as people. Even twins are not exactly the same. So when you're dealing with health, it is very important that it's tailored to the individual. And that's what we do at Vitavation. Another term that people use now is functional medicine. And what functional medicine is that you're using the approach of the naturopathic approach. However, you're also incorporating other systems that may benefit that person. So they're not totally against allopathic medicine, which is like going down the traditional path of hospitals, but most of it, what they do in functional medicine, is based on naturopathic medicine. The reason is because it's in tune with your body and your body aligns with it. So I started going down this path, and then Vitavation came about because a lot of people started asking questions, and they were like, well, you know, I've got this issue, or when I eat this, I've got this intolerance, or I got IBS, or I got diabetes, or there was so much. It was rare to talk to someone and didn't have something going on. And so Vitavation was created as a response. And when I say response, more of a one-stop shop, a foolproof method for the process of vitality. So we do scans, holistic health scans, and that's the basis of Vitavation. And the holistic health scans is really based on understanding the sacred language of your body. Everyone's body has its own sacred language. And someone says, okay, what does that mean? How can someone's body have a sacred language? Well, when you get a spot in a certain place, that's actually your body communicating what particular organ or system is stressed. So for example, and this is in Chinese medicine, it's in the meridians, it's also on the feet charts and the hand charts. So if you get a spot here, this correlates to your lungs. Here is your intestines, your large and your small colons. Here's your liver, your kidney. Here's your reproductive organs. Here is your bowels. So your face is expressing the inner health. So, you know, they say as within, so without, as above, so below. That principle deals with your temple. So in Vitavation, it's actually holistic. So we deal with understanding your body, first and what you need specifically for you, brother. So what you need is going to be completely different to what I need, and making sure there's a plan for you to actually be able to address what you need. And then there's programs we put people on to regenerate and literally heal their system. And then one of the things that I'm very passionate about as well is the emotional side, because that often gets neglected. So we feel like if you just deal with it physically, that's it, and you will eradicate it, or it will heal and it will be gone, never to come back again. But that's not necessarily true. And a lot of people can attest to that you see the emotions is usually the cause of how a disease even develops. Some will say, but why? Like, how can you prove that? Well, every emotion has a physical seat. So, for example, if somebody is living in fear, it could just be fear, you know, to do with job security, or fear in your relationship, or fear in your environment. The physical seat for fear is your kidneys. So the kidneys will start processing that emotion, but the kidneys also have to clean the blood and create urea. So it now puts stress on the kidneys. So if you now have kidney issues and you kind of like you do a cleanse, and I don't know, you may have even you may do a cleanse, or you may have dialysis, whatever it is. If you don't deal with the emotion that's caused the degeneration of the kidneys, it's only going to come back.
So here's the thing, and I'm glad that you touched on emotions, because that's one of the key areas that I definitely want us to explore more, and also
Mhm.
the impact that those emotions and trauma may have on
Oh,
us and our
oh,
physical being, and all the other great stuff. But before we get into that, you spoke about some of the at a high level, some of the ways that you go about diagnosing and providing
yes,
treatment. So can you give a couple of examples of what cutting edge holistic technologies that you
yes,
use, what it
yes.
can find in people, and then how you can then use that information to providing people, like you said, a tailored bespoke health plan for their needs?
Yeah, definitely. So we use a range of different scans. However, this range is under one category and it's called bioresonance. And what bioresonance means is that it actually reads the frequency of the body. So, like colors, if you know about the visible spectrum, colors is only like this much of the electromagnetic spectrum. Within that spectrum, you've got gamma waves, you've got X rays, they're all part of the electromagnetic spectrum. So within your body, a disease has a frequency, health has a frequency. Now, with bioresonance scans, you can pick up the frequency before it's manifested physically. So, what makes that very intriguing and also very effective is you can actually pick up, identify issues, terminal issues, before they've even manifested. And then you can also identify what's manifested, but the cause behind it as well. So, for example, if somebody has, let's say, they've got insulin resistance, which is a big issue for a lot of people right now, and it's kind of gone unnoticed. People don't really talk about it because not many people know about it. However, insulin resistance is what you would call pre-diabetic state. And in that pre-diabetic state, it will cause cardiovascular issues. So that's like heart attacks, strokes, anything to do with your circulation and your heart. And if you know anything about cardiovascular issues, it's number one for cause of death. It's actually the highest. So even in the scans, as an example, early signs of cardiovascular issues come up. And how it will show up as like blood viscosity, which is now the fluidity of the blood. Is how sludgy or how weighed down your blood is will determine the viscosity. Now, if your blood has a lot of waste in it, which a lot of people's do, what happens, it puts more pressure on the heart to pump the blood around the body, which then means the muscles and the organs are not going to be detoxifying and cleansing. So you're going to be carrying more inflammation within your system, and you're going to have less oxygen going to your muscles. And that means there's going to be more acid buildup and so on and so forth. So we use the bioresonance, but we don't just use one scan. We have 3 different scans we use, and people have a choice with what scan they actually they select for their session. But within just one scan, there's about about another 30 different scans. We do food scans. So the system will have a conversation with your body and ask your body, what foods do you want right now? Because a lot of us will eat the same foods all year round, but actually the environment is not the same all year round. And your body responds to the environment. How do you know that? Well, when it gets cold, your body starts changing its internal temperature. When it gets hot, your body starts changing its internal temperature. So it's in homeostasis with the environment. So that would also follow the foods that are actually seasonal, that the environment is actually produced during that period of time, is actually going to be more conducive to your health. But we're not eating like that. And then when we see like hunter gatherers, we'll be like, oh, that's primitive. But actually, they're more in tune with the environment than we are, living in, the concrete jungle or this kind of Western hemisphere. So it's important, what foods your body wants at this time. Some foods are great for you now, like your body wants them, but have them in the winter, they're going to cause issues. Some foods you could eat before. You know what I'm saying? When you were 18, 25, 35. But when you're 45, your body doesn't want them no more.
So here's a quick one for you. And I think this
Yeah.
is really good and it's very useful. That's why I'm even listening attentively. Because we've all got health, and obviously it's an area that I want to make sure I look after. You mentioned there that there's some foods that you can eat now, but if you eat them in winter, you're gonna have problems. So being a single man, a single co-parenting father as well, one of the areas that I tend to neglect and I'm aware of is my eating habits. I'm the type of guy who can sometimes get to like 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon after many meetings, be like, oh, my stomach's hurting me.
Yeah.
Why? Oh yeah, I haven't eaten. Oh, I haven't had no breakfast. Do you know what I mean? So, and then I'm the type of person who just grab anything sometimes.
Yeah.
What type of foods, therefore, going back to my original question, what foods for the audience as well should people be aware of that they can eat now, but maybe not in the winter season?
So a lot of the sweet foods, so like if you notice around like the summer is when the sweeter fruits, will be coming into season. So, like the melons, and although they don't really grow here, but in the tropics, like the melons and so on and so forth, those the melon's not even the sweetest, but even like the citrus fruits as well. But melons, citrus fruits, even like, you've got the sour saps and you've got that whole family, because even with the sour sap family, that's one fruit in a range of different fruits. Like if you go to the tropics, they have one called sweet sap, which looks the same, but it's small and it's much sweeter. Then you've got the mangoes, then you've got the mangoes, you've got the melons, then you've got like, if you've got what are they called, like depending on where you go, like Malaysia, you've got like the dragon fruits, you've got the jackfruits as well. So the sweeter fruits in the summer, they're better for you and they're good for you. You know what I'm saying? Because they have a high glucose content. So your body, because of the heat, will burn off the sugar much quicker. Yes, it's healthier sugar because it's natural, but your body will use it much quicker because it's hot and your body now needs to actually produce that energy to function. But in the winter, where your body's trying to conserve energy, the sweet fruits are not the best. They're not even in season around then. There may be one or two in season, but the majority of them are not. And the reason is because your body's trying to conserve energy in the winter. So when you're eating these foods, what your body will do is it will now either, if the sugar is left in the blood, it's going to cause a lot of issues. So your body will turn it into fat in order to store it. And it will turn it into fat to store it for when you need it at a later date. But if you keep on bombarding your body with a lot of sugar, and the fruits are better for you, they're much better than the carbohydrates and the refined carbohydrates. But if you keep on bombarding your body with lots of sugar, and I'll say carbs, rice, yam, potato, just the starchy vegetables, all of that. If you keep bombarding your body with it, what happens is your body then will take the actual sugar and shove it into your liver as fat to store it, and that causes liver stones. Or it will take the excess sugar and shove it in your arteries and veins, because it needs to keep it out of the blood, because if it's in the blood, it's going to cause a lot of inflammation and it will exacerbate any issue you have. So what the best thing to do is, in the summer months, have your sweet fruits, and then as it comes to the winter, you slow down on your sweet fruits, and you have like your berries, your blueberries, your raspberries, one or two melons, you have your grapefruits and so on and so forth. And if you watch nature, you can even see what's in season is very much consistent with what your body needs. Does that answer your question?
No, it does, and I guess based on the UK or where we are, so I'm in my mind when you were saying or reading of some of those seasonal fruits, I was thinking strawberries. Would that be like
Yep.
something
The
like that, right?
berries.
Okay, great.
Yeah, the berries.
The berries. Got it. Got it. Really, really, really useful information.
Yes,
So
yes, yes.
it isn't another question for you. So doing the work that you do,
Mm.
what are some of the most common health issues that you are seeing, mainly affecting the Black people in the Black community? And what are some quick things people can do to start paying attention to that and potentially
Awesome.
improving that depending where they are?
That's a great question, bro. Very, very good question. So one of the main things that I see in the community is issues with their colons. That means bowel issues. That's issues with digestion. That's issues with what we call peristalsis, which is the contraction of the muscles that helps push the food through from your small intestine, well, your stomach, your small intestines to your large intestines. That's one, it's a massive issue. Most people are constipated, King. Most people. But what we see constipation as if you don't go toilet for a week. If you are not going every day, and not just once a day, it should correlate with how many times you eat. If you eat 3 times a day, you should go toilet 3 times the next day. That's how it should be. Because if you don't, what happened to the other food that you ate? So if you go once tomorrow, but you ate 3 times, what happened to the other the 2 lunches or the 2 dinners you have? Where are they gone? They're still inside of you. And then what happens? It just starts to rot and it putrefies and becomes acidic and then clogs up your bowels. So most people, they're going toilet in arrears, which means what's coming today is pushing down what's came in 2 weeks ago, and so on and so forth. And that's the case. So colon issues. And one of the remedies for that is eating high fibrous foods. Raw foods is very good for that. Making sure you're getting the raw greens in, you're getting your kale, you're getting your spinach, you're getting your cucumbers in, you're getting your broccoli in, your cauliflower. It's very good fibrous food. Very, very good for you. There's even another, it's a kernel from a seed and it's called psyllium husk. That's very good as well. They use it as a thickener in India. And they use it as well, like as dietary fiber, but taking a bit of that in the morning in a smoothie helps to regulate the bowels. We have products as well. We have a bowel blast, we have a colon flush, and these products really help get people's bowels moving. Another remedy for colonic issues is colonic irrigation helps. Enemas help. I never knew that enemas was something a lot of people knew about. I thought it was like some secret taboo kind of health secret until I started asking people and telling people about it. My mum used to do it to me when I was young because I had bowel issues, and then, or I went to a doctor, they told me I need to do a few enemas. I was like, why isn't this more widespread? Because when you even go into villages in Africa, they do enemas. It's known. They know that if you're eating a certain way, you're prone to get clogged in your bowels. So with them back home, they do it often. So I actually thought it was something that started here, but it didn't start here. It's something that actually began in the indigenous tribes, and then it's been brought over to the West because they understand how effective it is to actually nourish the bowels and keep your bowel health up to par, up to scratch. Now, what it is, if your bowel health is poor, so is got your mind is going to be poor. Your cognitive abilities is going to be poor. Your ability to maintain, focus, your ability to retain information, your memory is going to suffer. Why? Because your bowels is your enteric nervous system, they call it, which means it's the place you feel from. That's where your solar plexus is. That's where people get butterflies. That's where people get anxiety. Anything that affects your bowels also affects your brain because they are a direct link. They're a mirror image of one another. Your brain just is smaller. But even if you look at the diagrams of the brain and the bowels, they actually favor or resemble each other. And there's a reason for that. So if someone has a stomach upset, their mind, they start getting brain fog. Brain fog is something a lot of people have where they just feel drained. They have no energy. And this is a phenomena that a lot of people are talking about. They don't have no energy, and they may drink coffee, which is a stimulant, I'm saying, which then causes more problems. Or what they may do is they may go and have a Budweiser, which is extremely toxic, So people are trying to cure the symptoms without knowing what the cause is. They don't want to address, they may not be aware that, oh, it's my lifestyle. So what they do is follow the adverts, which gives them a temporary solution. So colon issues is one of the biggest problems I find when I'm doing scans. And there's even a theory and a movement that people say that actually 99% of diseases start in your colons. There's a big movement. It's been going on for years and years and years where people have been proven, and when I say proven, they've got data studies showing you that, oh, before this person developed this issue, they had this issue in their colons, so their colonic health was already compromised. And then they developed the kidney stones or the liver stones, or then they developed kidney failure and so on and so forth. That's a big issue. Another big issue is cardiovascular issues with the blood, issues with having a lot of what they call it being over fat. So someone could be skinny, but they have a lot of internal visceral fat. And what that means is there's fat or cholesterol in the blood, and there's fat and cholesterol in their arteries and their veins, and so what you would get is you'll get belly fat, and so you may be slim everywhere else, but you have belly fat. Or you could be slim, but your blood pressure's high. That's a big, big, big issue. And usually that's coming from carbohydrates. It's coming from insulin resistance. That's a big issue. Did I answer your question?
Can you see my face, bro? I'm just seeing here. So in many ways, no, I'm being real now,
I know.
I said I was going to book in. All you've just did is in many ways, you described me.
Oh,
and
shit.
I think you've described many business people who get caught up in focusing on making our businesses a success, and as a result, our health pays. And sometimes we think, oh, it's just a short-term debt. I will pay it back when I get successful. Yeah, right. Once I get, then I'll take care of it. But you've described it, right? I'm not going 3 times a day. I'm not eating properly. I'm not, and some of the things you're talking about. I'm that person who's like, boy, I'm tired. I'm always tired. But it's like, I'm busy and I've got this going on in my life. And then, like you said, I'm going to drink coffee. I never used to drink coffee, but I drink coffee now. Just like, I need to get through. But there's a price to pay for all of that, right?
Literally. And you see, there's a saying. It says, if you don't make time for your health, you won't have time for anything else. And these hard-hitting sayings, they are, yes, tongue-in-cheek. They are also a bit of satire. However, the truth is what hits home because they're very accurate. You don't make time for your health, you have time for anything else. Because a lot of us, we are in the habit and in practices of maintaining our physical temple in terms of our home. We know that, if someone comes into your house, and you've got feces on the floor or rats, we know that, okay, socially and hygienically, it's going to cost you your reputation and probably your health. But we don't actually apply that same logic or that same paradigm to our temple. We think that the things that go on with us within our physical, when I say physical, our biological temple, we think it's just normal. It's normal that I'm getting headaches every day. It's normal that my body's inflamed. It's normal I can't lose or put on weight. It's normal that I have halitosis. It's normal that I have a lot of excessive odor. That is not normal. And what it is, we've become accustomed to making that normal. And it's now goes back to, and this isn't, there's no, I'm not putting fault on anybody watching. I'm not saying it's your fault, but you are 100% responsible for your health. The
Agreed.
reason is to put your health and your vitality in the hands of somebody else is suicide. I don't care if it's a professional. It's suicide because they're not going to be able to care for you more than they care for themselves. So even at that, what you're going to be getting from them is a substandard service based on what you can give to yourself if you were utilizing their expertise, but you were leading the ship. And so it comes back to responsibility, but that's another word that has a lot of, it has a lot of connotation, and it also has a lot of charge around it. Responsibility. You know, it's something that, you know, growing up, that is almost seen as a burden to be responsible. And I think that that also stems back from school, you know, the way it's used. It has a lot of negative connotation, a lot of history around it. But we need to redefine these words, because responsibility does not mean, oh, you're wrong, it's just your fault. Responsibility actually is your access to power, it's your access to transformation, it's your access to change. I hope that makes sense.
I agree, because one of the things I say about that word
Yeah.
responsibility,
Yeah.
break it down. Responsibility, our
Yes.
ability to choose. So it's that pause in between stimulus and response. Our ability to choose how we are going to respond to an external or even an internal trigger or stimuli, right?
Exactly.
Responsibility. How do you respond? I totally agree. And I think, and some of our conversations, maybe we'll go further in that, because sometimes I think, for the same reasons and other reasons that you mentioned, about the word responsibility, sometimes I think not only do we as human beings disempower ourselves,
Mm,
but we rob the world of the ability for us to bring about positive change. Because we look at
absolutely.
things and say, well, I'm not responsible for that, because we feel it might be, like you said, going back to the whole thing about fault. But we're expanding that in a moment, because it's something I think that's quite relevant, especially in our community, that we may be able to touch on it around that. But
Yep.
before we go there, you spoke before about emotions.
Hmm.
You touched on it a number of times. Let's expand on that a bit more.
Yeah, let's go.
In what ways do emotions impact our health, not just our mental health, but actually our physical health? And for those who might be still a bit skeptic about that, where is the evidence for that?
Cool. Great, bro. That's a very, very good question. All right. How should I deal with this? All right. Firstly, how you can prove emotions are reality and they underpin health is because the word or the condition, let's say depression, let's use that as an example. Somebody can have a physical experience. Let's talk about, let's say, stage fright. Someone can go on stage, usually confident, and for some reason, you know, maybe they're not prepared, that voice in their head, you know, that internal dialogue takes over. And I'm speaking from experience because this happened to me. And so you have this experience, which is a fight or flight or freeze experience. You know, we call it stage fright, but stage fright is actually a term. However, the sensation internally is completely different from the term. You know, so the sensation could be intense fear, trauma. 1 second, my brother, stay there 1 second.
And we are still here. So we're just waiting for Albert to sort out a few things. But feel free to put your comments, put your questions, put your feedback in the comment section as well. Join the conversation. If you've got any questions for Albert, please do feel free to put them in the comment section. Go ahead, King.
Yeah, apologies about that.
No worries.
So you're now having this experience, yeah, which is anxiety, nervousness, fear, sweating, headaches, all manner of things can manifest when somebody is going through a traumatic experience. So this traumatic experience, which started off mental, is now having a biological effect. So imagine it was mental, it was in the mind. There was no threat in terms of if you were looking as an observer at the situation, there's no threat. It's not like there's a lion there, there's no one that's got a gun to your head. However, based on the perspective and the perception, you deem it as threatening. Now, what is that threatening to? Your identity, who you've come to be, who you've called yourself to be. So now that identity be under threat goes into fight, flight, or freeze. You freeze. And then after you freeze, and then now you regain your consciousness, now you may say, okay, look, I've regained my consciousness, and you continue with what you have to say, or you step off and you're just a bit perturbed and a bit uneasy. Yeah. That now triggers a conversation going on in your head. Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And then that triggers more cortisol or adrenaline, and adrenaline and cortisol is produced when you're in these stressful situations. So it's what enables your body to respond, whenever there's danger. But now that's happening every day. Every day, I'm not good enough. So it's like you're waking up and there is either a robber in your house, a lion, a gun, whatever it is, there's some threat you're waking up to every single day. Little by little, what's going to happen is you're not just going to think you're depressed, you're going to become depression. So what happened? Your nutrition's going to drop because your body's taxed every single day trying to deal with the trauma, trying to deal with the threat. Your nutrition's going to drop because your body needs to now send the nutrition to your brain to deal with this power surge. Little by little, what's going to happen is your organs are going to start reacting because they need to now process this energy. They need to process the adrenaline. Adrenaline prolonged in your blood is actually toxic. It's poisonous. And this is something, don't believe me, do the research. It is toxic, prolonged in your blood. It's meant to come for a moment to help you and then leave. But we're in situations where we're stressed at work. We're stressed in our relationships. We're stressed in our position of where we are in life. We're stressed with what we've not dealt with, what we've not given light to. We are stressed with things we didn't say. There is so much going on in people's mental space that a lot of people are on the spectrum of depression. Most people are. Yeah. So these emotions now cause physical ailments, whether it's like organ failure, whether you start suffering with lower back pain, whether you start suffering with heart palpitations. It's going to manifest because the pressure of the emotions and the adrenaline and the cortisol directly affects the organs. And then the hormones. Hormones is a big deal. The hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, your serotonin is going to be affected. Your melatonin is going to be affected. So your sleep's now going to get thrown off. And then your body can't regenerate. And one thing I want to say, the body is one indivisible organism. Everything is connected. So we got to see it like dominoes, like old school dominoes, like when the elders are playing it and you get a run. When one domino knocks the other one down and it runs all the way around, that's the same as your body. Everything is connected. If there's an issue with your liver, your kidney will help your liver. If there's an issue with your liver, if there's an issue with your blood, your liver will support your blood. So the body's communicating there, and you can go as far. There's people that actually do therapies where it's called body talk. You talk to your body because every organ has consciousness. This is why every organ knows what to do. Can't remember, your body knows how to look after you better than you. We put stuff in our mouth. We put stuff in our mouth every day. We have no business putting in our mouth. We do that every day. And we know it as well, we know we have no business, but we still do it. And your body still knows what to do to cleanse it out. Yeah, so I hope that answered your question. If not, let me know and I'll expound on it.
No. I mean, it totally did. And I can relate to that through personal experience. So, I am a person who's quite resilient, persistent, and can overcome most things in life. Up until a few years ago, I never thought that I would be somebody who would suffer depression. but as I was going through some major personal stuff in my life, some of you will notice I went into depression for about 4 months. It's only when I came out of depression that I realized it was depression. But yeah,
Exactly.
in that space, not eating, not sleeping, not taking care of self. Also, I think during that period of towards the end of it, I went for a health check because my body was still playing up and all of that. Then I'm told that, oh yeah, you're pre-diabetic, but everything else you've got going on in your life, this is what would trigger it. It's in your family. So that's a prime example
And
of,
then,
hey,
Barbara, look at this. I didn't even know any of this. You've never told me this. You remember, like a lot of people like look at this and be like, "Oh yeah, you lot are familiar with each other." Actually, this is the longest conversation we've had, literally. So I didn't know none of this.
oh
And
yeah,
look at the
that's the thing.
synchronicity.
And that's it. But that's life, right? So like I said, I'm seeing here and I can relate to it. I'm like, okay, yep, I can see that. I can see that. I know it through my own personal experience. And so also that's also helped me in the line of work that I do, which even though it's around organizational management change, because my need or speciality is focusing on individuals, it's also helping me to pay more attention to the emotional side of people and how those triggers then manifest in behaviors. So I'm totally hearing that. So here's another question for you. So I don't know if you had a chance, excuse me, to see some videos that were going around recently. One of them was of some younger children in a park, which I'd call Nordea. Some of you will know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm old school. I'm 47. Yeah, what and what, right? So, but anyway, but you see,
Boy.
there you go, bro. Hackney Marshes,
I love
Brockwell
it.
Park, Frisbee Park.
Come
Yeah.
on. Next, you're going to be saying shubbeens and shubs.
But there you go, bro. There you go. You know how it goes. Wallpaper. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. But anyway, seeing those videos of the children in an event in the park, and then also the one of the 4 guys who kind of, we're seeing a lot more of these things happening, right? And I guess social media makes it easier for it to become much more widely circulated and eyes focus on stuff that's always been happening. How much of what you see being played out is trauma?
All of it. All of it. Yeah, all of it. And, that's not even a bold statement. I think that's just so standard. All of it's trauma. The only thing is when trauma is not recognized, we call it other things, and I know I've been guilty of that. Like you may be dealing with people on a day-to-day basis. It could be your husband, it could be your wife, could be your children, could be your colleagues, family. And we will more deem as that person's being rude, or they're awkward, or they're socially awkward, because we don't have the distinction for what trauma looks like and what it even feels like. And then to be frank, we're in a culture, which is rooted in trauma, like rooted in trauma. So you've got generational trauma that's not been dealt with. And this is another thing we do at Vitavation. We do perception reframing. And apart from the nutritional side, the food side is one aspect. So you've got different domains. You've got like the mindset, which is to do, with your mentality, to do with how you frame your life. And I'm just going to segue slightly because every issue we have in life correlates to who we're being. And someone say, what does that even mean, who you're being? Well, what I mean is what we end up with in life, what we end up with, the answer to the equation, of what we experience is actually rooted in the equation. It's literally rooted in the equation. So what you end up with is a direct result of the steps you've taken before and who you've become. The diseases, the people, the circumstances. And that there is just a standard principle, but a lot of us are not aware of it. So what we tend to do is look outwards, outwards, outwards. You done it. System, society, this, that. And you see, when we do that, we don't have the response and ability. And so what we do, we give away our power again. So you've got the mindset, which is your context for living. Yeah. And then you've also got your heart set, which is your emotional context. And a lot of us don't deal with that. A lot of us, we don't even know it's there, because we've been brought up in cultures where we're told, like, a boy or a man shouldn't cry, a deer. So there's so much. It's just so
Mm,
much, so much sweeping under the rug, so much suppression and oppression that's just become normal. Then you've
mm,
also got your health set, which deals with your nutrition. So we deal with all of that at Vitavation. Now, in those videos, that's straight trauma. Because you see, one thing that you can realize about trauma as well is triggers. So I could see you, and let's say you're an ops, as the people say now, like the young people say, oh, that's an ops, he lives in this area code, da da. I mean, you've never had an issue. We've never had an issue. So I don't even have a space for you in my psyche like that because I don't have an issue with you. But when I'm dealing with you, you are not Ade. You understand? You're all the stuff I've not dealt with. So my thing is, I've been taught now by computer games, movies, songs, that when I am in a state of fear, attack. So what I'm going to do, the fear comes up, the trauma comes up, I'm going to attack you. But in that moment, I'm not even thinking cognitively. I am not even calculating. I'm reacting to a program. Literally. So, like you got circuits. And this is something you study as well in like psychology, that when that circuit, decides to cut, because it often happens, you've got the circuit of the personality, your day-to-day behavior. You can see it with children. Watch the way children are when they're safe and familiar. Watch them at home. Watch them at home, or where the girls are with their girls, the boys with them. It's a different person. Then watch them when they're now, feel like they've been threatened, or the identity, but it's something else that comes. That circuit cuts out, and what goes in is a survival program.
of course.
And so then what happens in that moment, people do things that are so-called out of character because there's no consequence. They feel like, if I don't do this, I am not going to survive. And I'm not going to survive is not just physically. A lot of us think it's physical. No,
Of
my
course.
identity is not going to survive. My low self-esteem is not going to survive. My lack of confidence is not. All of those things come up. So to answer your question, all of it's trauma. And it's
Mm.
not been dealt with.
And I hear you. I mean, that's one of my views as well. And I also believe, because a lot of times I hear people talking about them as if they're separate from us, not
Exactly.
recognizing they're our product. I usually say to people, if you think about it, that act of sex, the two people lying down with each other, there's an exchange of energy.
Come on.
Most acts of sex do not lead to a creation of life. So what do we
Mm-hmm.
think happens when that sex actually leads to creation of life? If we're changing energy, surely we're
Exactly.
passing energy into that child. And if we've got trauma undealt with that we're
Exactly.
unaware of, surely it's going to also pass on to the child. But then also going back to what you're saying,
Exactly.
because we have our own trauma that we may not have dealt with, we have our own triggers. And some of our children grow up in environments where they see that mommy and daddy won't take no nonsense
Literally.
from nobody. They will argue with about
Yep.
anything with
Yep.
anybody,
Yep.
even the person
Yep.
on the phone.
Yep.
They'll argue, right? Their
Yep.
position. Going back to what you said to save our. So then, do we blame our children if they then take this and say, "This is how I deal with trauma.
Yep.
This is how I deal with threatening situations, and this is how we run it out on the road."
Exactly. It's the same. I mean, everything you said is correct. And you know what it is? The young people, they're mirroring us. And this is the whole thing, a lot of us, we try and take the mirror, turn the mirror to this side, correct the image in the mirror. How can you try and correct the mirror? You better correct yourself, So the young people, they're mirroring us, they're mirroring society. Secondly, when you're dealing with like indigenous children, black children, they're hypersensitive. And it's also gone unnoticed. And why it's gone unnoticed is because we don't have a distinction for it. And when I say distinction, if you don't have a distinction for something, it doesn't exist to you. It just looks weird and awkward. So if you don't have these distinctions, you will miss all these things. They're invisible to you. And when I say they're invisible to you, these characteristics are invisible. So you don't even know when your child is developing into that. As far as you're concerned, he's just going through something. You don't get that his self-esteem is dying right now. You don't get that his or her zest for life is suffering right now. And then what do? Because now there's no example, they don't have, and we're not teaching children to be emotionally literate, which is one of the biggest issues. So what do? They wear a mask. Because it's like, well, I need something to express myself. So let me express myself with this language. Because the other language is insufficient. And that's what's going on. So then what you're going to see now is people walking around with all this baggage, and not just from their lifetime. They've got baggage from their parents. They've got baggage from their grandparents, not dealt with and taken out on each other. How can, like, someone showed me a video yesterday with someone running after another person with a big sword. I'm like, words escape me. You know what I'm saying? And if you sat them down and had a conversation with both of them, they have more in common than they don't, you know. A sword. And that's something, I'm saying words escape me, but to be honest, a lot of younger people, they are used to that. That's normal for them. I remember I was part of MAG, worked with MAG extensively, one of the founders as well. So literally, when we've had these conversations, what we can see is, oh my gosh, that's some boys in the hood stuff. That's normal. I remember we asked a question in one of our sessions early on, it's like 3-4 years ago. And we're like, how many of you, and this was, I think everyone in that session was under the age of 17, 16. They're all below that age. 16 or below. They're all below that age. Like, how many of you believe that you're going to make it to see 21? And no, we asked it the other way around. We say who, because one of the young people said they don't think they're going to see 21. I'm like, that's serious. And you're comfortable with that? And he was like, yeah. Like, I watched my friend die. I watched this one die. Like, okay. And then we said, who else feels they're not going to make it to see 21? And at least there was maybe about 25, 23 of them put up their hands. And it's not even like they were affiliated in any type of activity like that. They just felt that based on, you know, their demographic, they're not going to make it.
I don't know what to say. It's sad, and I hear you, because the work that I do with young people, and I can relate. I think after those videos went out, there was a video that I saw on Facebook of a young girl who comes from that kind of, and she was talking about, well, yeah, everyone carries knives. We all carry knives. That's the life that we live. Everyone's scared of things. And furthermore, she wants a man who can defend himself. She don't want no man and in many ways, I see people criticizing her, but I'm like, hey, take a step out and step into those people's world. That's their reality. That's the reality. And sometimes I say it, and I don't, once again, when I'm saying this now, I'm not making anybody at fault, but it's that case of responsibility.
Yeah.
That's our community, our children. I hear this saying a lot. What is it? And you might be able to correct me on this one. If you don't bring the embrace the child into the warmth of the village, they'll burn it down. But I'm also beginning to see that for some of these kids, they don't want to be part of that village.
Nope.
They look at it, they're like, is that what you're offering me? Nah.
Literally. And you know what? So this is it now. If we kind of get into with the young people, they're craving for rites of passage. They're craving for initiation. Why? Because their soul wants it. Like, we look at young people, maybe like, oh, they're crazy, they're this, they're that, and all of that stuff, actually. But who's actually given them the tools that they need to navigate this world? And to be honest, sending them to school does not give them tools to navigate this world. What sending them to school does is give them tools to navigate getting a job. And at that, it doesn't even give them tools for that. But
I'd even go further, boldly say that actually, you know, that's what school's supposed to do. But for a lot of our youngsters, especially the boys, all school does is keep on telling them how rubbish they are and how they don't amount to nothing. So in effect, pushes them onto that environment where it says, hey, you can be a little bit of something here.
Literally, bro. And it's like there's the school to prison pipeline. You can watch it take effect. You watch these young people come into school, they're like this, they're bright. like got all this zest for life, creativity, imagination, want to watch anime, this, that. And then little by little, you see their light fade. And then before you know it, you wake up one day and say, who is this person in my house? Because that's not the child I gave birth to. But there were so many signs along the way. And then this is no fault or blame, but we've got to check our lifestyle, because mom and dad were too busy to even see the signs. And then what children will do, they don't have the vocabulary at that point in time if you haven't taught them to say, I need help. They will show it by doing things to get attention. And then when you give them more attention for that, what happens? They do more of that.
Of course, we reinforce the bad behavior, right?
Yeah.
Then parents themselves are going for their own trauma, so they can't get along. They can't deal with it because they don't know about their own trauma trigger. And then, like we said, we're just showing these kids that's the way it is. And like I always say, I've got 3 boys. I always say that, children don't listen to what you say. They watch what you do.
Come on, standard.
And that's why I love my boys. That's why I love my boys, because they are a mirror for me. And I've created that space where I allow them and I encourage them to hold up the mirror, whereby my reflection is not consistent with what I'm telling them how it should be.
That's
so they say, Daddy, go in the corner. Be like, what's what? So you're not allowed to do that. I'm like, okay. Daddy, go to your room. Your time out.
Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
Yeah. And sometimes I have to do it just because they've caught me out. And I'm like, all right, I could override this, but then what am I teaching them? Well, actually, if I say this, but if you've got the bigger stick, you can override what anybody says.
Exactly.
Sometimes I go to my room and I'll be like, can I come out now, boys? And if they push it, then I'm like, I'm coming out. But I hear you. I hear you. It's
that's how it should be. It's another thing as well, in regards to what you just shared. There's a saying, and the saying goes, parents do not teach children how to be children. Children teach parents how to be parents. Why? Is because children come into this world as children. You have to develop into a parent. And for the most part, a lot of people are still trying to figure out what this parenthood thing is. And this is no fault of their own either. They weren't initiated. So you've got now children who have grown in age, but not developed emotionally, having children. And that's been the case for quite a few generations. And when I say quite a few generations, I actually think I'm being quite modest there, but I will keep it there because I wasn't there before those generations. But I also understand that within these actual cycles and these family cycles and these generational cycles, we've had this issue going on where people are not in. Yeah, I'm there. You cut off,
You there?
I can hear you.
Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, we seem to have maybe lost Mr. Albert.
Can you hear me?
I'm sure he will be back. I'm hoping we'll be back. Because, what's happening? Is it still on?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Okay, not quite sure what's going on here. So what we'll do is we'll wait a little bit. Hopefully, Albert will be able to come back, join us back here, because I'm sure you agree with me that there's been so much value. But whilst we wait for him to join us, have a quick look at this. So there you go, guys. Like I said before, so pop on over to summit@shakoya.com to register your free place. at the Unfair Advantage Virtual Business Summit. So you're going to have 5 business experts, globally recognized business experts, sharing tips and strategies that are important for you to be able to succeed or to build a profitable business, to scale it, to take your ideas and to manifest it into the outcomes that you want. So just come along. So head on over there to summit.adishukwe.com and register free. Obviously, free seats are subject to availability. But yeah, looking forward to see you there this coming Saturday, 12th June, online, starting at 1 p.m. Awesome. Right. Thank you. I'm glad you made it back, bro, because you were just touching on some really key things and we didn't want to lose you at that point. So, as we were wrapping up, you were sharing.
I could hear you, you know. I was still there. You went and came back and I could still hear you fine, but you couldn't hear me. And then Andrea Barrow said, I can see and hear you both, but for some reason you weren't hearing me.
Oh, thank you, Andrew Barnes. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. That's technology for you, but we're agile, and that means we respond and adapt to change. You were hitting on some key points there, my brothers. So just
yes,
wrapping up.
What was I saying? So I was saying that so you've had like young people who have not been given the tools of how to navigate themselves emotionally, and then they've had children. And so if you cannot navigate yourself emotionally, your internal environment, all the stuff that you're carrying, you don't have no distinction for it. You just know you're affected. You just know that, oh my gosh, I go through these cycles, or I'm depressed, or I'm sad, or I'm in this kind of perpetual cycle, you know, of trauma bonding with different partners, or I'm in and out of relationships, so I keep on attracting these types of experiences. You're aware of that, but there's no remedy because you don't have the tools for it. And unless you get sick and tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired, that anything is better than staying within that cycle, you're going to stay in that cycle. So most people stay in that cycle. Then they have children in that cycle. And so now after the honeymoon period is over, you know, the child goes from being, oh, this cute little handbag, you know, you can flaunt the child and all that stuff there. But then the child starts showing you yourself. That's when it gets real. Because the child will show you. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's at 5 or 7 or 6. And what tends to happen, if you've not got the tools, child's not got the tools, your partner's not got the tools, you lot are just sitting on top of this baggage. Then more baggage, then more baggage, then more baggage, then more baggage, you know? And then before you know it, you're on this mountain of baggage. And the great thing is that can be remedied. That can be healed, but it takes something. And when I say it takes something, it takes actually stepping out of the comfort zone, being a child again. And when I say being a child, there's a saying that adults are distorted and deteriorated children, because what tends to happen is becoming an adult, you now start adhering, you know, to rules and regulations and having responsibilities, so they call it. And we deem that as being an adult, you know, literally. How about your emotional development? You know, how about your passions? Those things often get left to the side because I've got to survive. So what is an adult? A surviving being, someone that survives. That's very dangerous, you know, and that is actually what's come of a lot of people in our society and across the world, actually. So now children come into our lives to bring new possibilities. But if we don't, because imagine you've got this soul, you've got this essence that's come into your life, into your world, pure, unadulterated, as a gift. You know, the way we see things, not the way that actual soul is seeing things. So there's so many new possibilities. Do we allow that to flourish? You know, there's in the Dagara tribe, when a woman's going to have a child, what they do, the elders come around and they do a ceremony with the lady where they connect with the soul and be like, look, what have you come to do in this village? Because they believe and they practice that every child is a gift and has come to bring new possibilities to the community. So they prepare for that child. And then they make sure as the child grows up, whatever the child's purpose is, they will give them little symbolic gestures. They're not telling them how to do it. Because if you tell them how to do it, you're interfering with their own creative process and you're projecting, which means there's no future in that. all you're going to do is project what you know, which is more of the past.
There you go.
So they allow that child to flourish, blossom, and come into full effect of what it is, you know. And in doing so, there's fulfillment. In doing so, there's purpose. In doing so, everybody benefits. So if there are young people who are murdering each other for sake of depression, stress, trauma that they can't even identify, we lose out. Nobody else, we lose out.
How do we, in your opinion, your experience, how do you, because I'm a systems thinker, the type of
Yeah.
work that I do with organizations, I'm like you, I'm a systems thinker. So I don't just look at the one problem. Um, and I remember I did a talk a while back on some of the problems that I see, part of, the gang life and the breakdown in the family. And you could tie in so many aspects. There's the economic side of it. Without us
Mm-hmm.
having access to capital in the same way, nor having a strong economic position in a capitalistic society, we end up living in the worst areas. The worst areas have
Mm-hmm.
the worst schools, which means you get the
Mm-hmm.
worst education, which means you go into a cycle of the worst jobs. The worst areas have the most violence because people are depressed,
Mm.
they have no jobs, low health. Therefore, people, all type of things happen. And a lot of these different issues, which are bombarding everyday people, have a big impact on the family and then lead to breakdowns
Mm.
of the family.
Literally.
Whether it's because of the economics, because of the housing, because in order to provide, one or the other feels that they need to go and do something illegal because they can't be part of a legal system to provide for their family, then get sent to prison. You see what I'm saying? It's to me, it's such a
All of it, yeah.
spaghetti mess of different things. How do we approach this? Bearing in mind, even just speaking about the children, for me, I hear that, hey, these are kids who, as a collective, we haven't been able to provide better opportunities,
Yep.
guidance, support for, and therefore they're manifesting what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Surely,
Absolutely.
therefore, a lot of the change that we're saying, oh, get these kids off the street. Oh, these kids,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't it? A lot of it lie with us, and there's some of us actually going away and resolving our issues, or at least facing them, or at least admitting to our kids that, hey, you know what? I did this, said this, but hey, here's where I was coming from because I've got issues as well. I've got this going on as well. What do you think?
I agree. It's all systematic. You know, the body is a system, literally. You have your circulatory system, your respiratory system, your cardiovascular system, your lymphatic system, your emotional system, which is based on chakras. The whole body is a system. The world operates as a system. We can identify so many different systems within our actual environment. So the approach gonna have to be a systematic approach. Why? Because it's a system that got us here, and one of the solutions is we need to invest first personally, because there's this, it's a tendency to be like, all right, you should do that. Oh, we should do this. No, what should I do first? And I'm going to speak about it from the microcosm, because the microcosm creates the macrocosm and so on and so forth. That you can take a strand of hair and you can diagnose someone with just a strand of hair. The scans that I use, you literally just put your hand on it, and from having a conversation with your hand based on your hand having nerve endings that connect your one hand to every part of your body, your system will speak to the scan and tell it what's going on, or with immunity, with food, with emotions, all that comes up. So we know systems is a reality here. But one system that I don't feel the community invest enough in is the system of healing. Healing is something which is almost like, in terms of our priority list, is way at the bottom. It's like we'll rather, you know, buy clothes, buy nice shoes, buy hair, buy nails, buy lashes, buy a what they call APs or whatever they're called, Rolexes, all this stuff, because these things are seen as, once we get them, we're going to be at a state, or we'll be at a position of wealth. So people trying to feel better from the outside in, and that will never work, because the issue that you've got within didn't start off physically. So it's not a physical solution you can apply to dealing with that hole in your heart. You have to go to where it is, which means you have to get into healing. So the system of healing is what we must first make customary, first personally. This is a personal thing, first of all, with everybody.
So let me ask you a question around that.
Yeah.
Some people don't realize that they need healing. Some people's self-defense mechanism that they've developed from young, from the most traumatic incidents, is actually to park that away somewhere, hide it somewhere,
Yep.
and to not ever face it.
Mm.
When I look back on my life as well, part of the reason why I started the journey, and the journey I'm on now is over 20 years, right? It was initially I wanted to become a counselor because I was a drug addict. That was like, what, 25 years ago. Wanted to become a counselor to help myself come off it. And as part of that journey, you need to do self-counseling. And that started opening up some stuff about me that I never was aware of. Like, oh my gosh. Oh, wow. That's why I do that. That's why I behave like that. And then brought tears and other bits. And then over the years, I spent a lot of time with, attending things like Tony Robbins, those investing. Each one of them opens up even more layers. Like, oh my gosh, sometimes you're in the corner just crying, like, oh my gosh, I never knew this about me. Oh my gosh, this is what I've been doing. This is how I'm manifesting it.
I know.
So I know that journey, but it took that moment, because up until I started that journey, and I had a physical reason why I started that journey 25, 30 years ago, for me to even become aware that a lot of the issues that I was facing, I could control them because they were within me. How do you get somebody who's been dealing with trauma upon trauma upon trauma, never ever dealt with it, and now saying, well, you've got to sort it out with yourself? How do they start that journey?
Yeah. You know the saying that you can take the horse to the fountain, but you can't make the horse drink? I think that reigns supreme here, because how do you advise or support someone who doesn't know that they don't know?
That's what I mean.
And so what I found is, if you try and continue or consistently, relentlessly support someone who they don't know, yes, you can plant some seeds that will grow when that season comes, and that's a beautiful thing. However, what you also can do is cause more damage, because what happens if you're giving this much of your time and your effort to this person, you may have expectations, and when those expectations are not met, then we can start creating all different stories around that. I'm saying, oh, they're ungrateful, they don't value me, they're this, they're all that stuff. So what I've found recently, this is more recently, because I've been that person for most of my life. I'm saying, literally, my output's been very much like the focus, 90% output, 10% back to myself, And then when you behave that way, you teach the world to leave you to last. I never understood why I kept on finding myself in these circumstances with people where I'm like, boy, I'll cut off my arm and give it to you if you need it. You know what I'm saying? But you won't even you won't even share what you have. You get me? You're not going to do the same. But I got it. I taught them how to treat me, because I'm giving you more energy and more effort than I'm giving to myself. So what does that say? I have it for you, but I don't have it for me. So you're not going to have it for me. It's really simple when you break it down like that. So I find, first, with those people, be the example. Be the example, because if they're in your world and they're sharing space with you, there is some commonality going on. And you see, when you're being the example, it means a couple of things will happen. You're not going to waste your time, because once you're being the example and you're pouring into your cup, you're not going to give from what's in your cup. That's another mistake. I've done that for most of my life. Here, take my last water, and they take my water, they spill it on the floor and come back and ask for more. Do you get me? I'm there dehydrated, dry mouth, everything. Yeah? So what it is...
Oh, they use it to wash the dust off their Nike sign on their trainer. Well, you're there dying of thirst. Like, yeah, cheers,
come
bro.
on, bro.
Now I'm on fire again. Thanks.
Exactly, bro. Come on. So you don't give... This is what Lisa Nichols talks about as well. You don't give from what's in your cup. Fill up your cup and keep filling up your cup. And when that cup overflows,
Oh, give the next
yeah,
person.
but I wouldn't even say there. Have two saucers. They overflow into the second saucer and give from what's there, because you can do that forever. And what that also shows them is how to fill up their own cup. What also that shows them is there's access to another way. You got to remember, a lot of people don't have the access. They think it's beyond them. They don't think they're worthy, because that's a big story that goes on with most people, even myself, not being good enough. Most people are not taught the science of knowing thyself. There's a science, there's a spiritual science to knowing yourself. And if you haven't gone through that rites of passage, we then pick up identities from elsewhere. The things we feel or the tools we feel are going to get us through that particular challenge. And before you know it, these identities are suffocating us. So to answer your question, I think before it's a collective thing, it must be a personal responsibility. We go back to how we started this, a personal responsibility for the individual first. Because I guarantee your example, although you may feel like, oh my gosh, it's quite small in terms of my reach. I believe, not even believe, I've experienced there's less than 6 degrees of separation.
Of course.
Everybody is connected. And you know, when you have an Apple phone like you, bro, you're connected to everybody. You get
There
me?
you
Because
go.
that's how these Apple phones are run, yeah. So what it is if you like literally make sure you pour into your cup and you start carving out that purpose and doing the work that you know you deserve in your heart. You know, that calling you've been hearing from since you were a child. I guarantee you that light and the residual effects of that light are going to touch other people. And as it touches them other people, they're going to be like, oh, there's an example there. Then they can actually take a step. And then they will affect the next person and a domino starts happening. However, if we stay in the mindset, which is a very redundant mindset, we've never seen it work. You know, all right, let's put this together. Everyone come together and we can do this and then it's done. No, because there's a system at play to dismantle that straight away.
Standard.
And we've seen it time and time again. Time and time again.
I hear. Each one needs to pick up not only their own cross, but there comes the point
Mm-hmm.
when we start recognizing it's much bigger than our own individual crosses. Like you said, it's
Exactly.
leading by example, right? Just demonstrating, showing, and being there to support and help each other. And like I said, for me, I think the biggest breakthrough as we start to wrap up was recognizing my own trauma and therefore being able to embrace it. But also, one of the areas that became a big breakthrough for me was recognizing being selfish is not a bad thing.
Definitely
Because
not.
as you said, when I started learning to practice that, actually, you know what?
Mhm.
Being somebody similar to yourself. If I keep on giving, and recognizing that some people take advantage of it and therefore leave with nothing, then I've got
Come
nothing
on.
to give anybody else, even if I like giving.
Nothing.
Right? So it
Nothing.
makes sense. And that's why I started adopting that view of actually it's okay to be selfish, which is, like you said, fill up your own cup. Maybe fill up another bucket. And then you know what? Once we're flowing, everyone can have everything else, but I'm always going to keep the golden goose.
Exactly.
So no matter what, if you take
Exactly.
everything, fine. I can still continue the mission. And I hear you. So if anybody listening out there, being selfish is not a bad thing. Obviously, for some people who may not have evolved to that, that might create issues. Going back to what you said before, if they're used to
Mm.
you, hey, give me your last. All right, here you go. You can have my last, and then also you get to that point where you're like, well, no, slow down. I'll give you something a bit later, but right now
Yeah.
this here, and no, we're not touching it. Then
Yeah.
that, what are you talking about? You, what's that? Right, you get me.
Exactly. And you know, that's
Right,
it. There's a saying as well. You see, when you start laying boundaries down
mm,
and people start getting triggered, affected, or they start to not like you, you know what I'm saying, because you've got these boundaries down, it tells you a lot about your relationships with that person. Because what they are actually reacting to is not having that leeway or that opening, you know what I'm saying, that they had before. And that's letting you know that that entitlement is what they're reacting to. You know what I'm saying? So it's a sure way to know what type of relationships you've got in your life. But to have boundaries as well also means honoring your boundaries. And that's even another actual step, is to honor your boundaries. Because if you don't honor your boundaries, you teach other people to violate and disrespect your boundaries. So we are forever the example for how the world should treat us based on the way we treat ourselves. And then going back to health, if you're somebody and you start valuing your temple, you start valuing, the health status of your temple, you send reverberations out in your world. You know what I'm saying? Where other people start to value you in a certain way. I remember when I first kind of transitioned, everyone was laughing at me. Like at least 70% of the people that I knew were laughing at me. They weren't on it, especially the family. Oh, rabbit food. Oh, you're going to be unhealthy. You're going to do all of that. And then I didn't take it personally, though. I just found it amusing because I just understood they were resisting change. Because you see what happens, a lot of us don't like to tell the truth. Most of us want to be together. We belong with each other. We want to be together. We want that. Like, why? Because we're communal beings. We didn't just manifest on earth based on ourselves. Two people came together and in a portal and we came through. So that is encoded in our DNA. So when somebody shows signs of leaving the pack, even if it's to benefit themselves, you've got this post-traumatic slavery syndrome that comes online where it's like, no, crabs, you need to come back here. Because I don't feel secure that you are starting this new thing to better yourself. Come back here. But it's disguised as many things. Rabbit food, you think you're better, and all that stuff there. However, if you remain steadfast and true to your heart, when I say heart, everyone knows what I'm talking about. That feeling you've got, guarantee you the world will catch up with you. You don't have to slow down. And if you don't slow down, what happens? The people that are supposed to be in your world, they will catch up. Some people are already there. You may have never known they were there, but now you have eyes to see them. And the ones who are not going to stand the test of time, you can still be cool with them, but they're just not going to be in that world with you. So that's how I would advise to approach it.
I think there's something that you said there, and I think that's a good way for us to start wrapping up, which was this. Like I said, I'm a systems thinker, so my mind ties things in, right? The way that we treat ourselves gives instructions at the individual level, the micro level. The way that we treat ourselves gives people permission about how they treat us. The way we define our boundaries or stick to our boundaries also determines how people interact with us. Knowing what our boundaries are and being able to stand by them requires that we know who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the point I'm about to make is this. That's at the individual level when we say how people perceive us or treat us if we don't define properly and show up properly. Imagine what happens at a macro level when a lot of people from a similar culture, background, i.e. race, are perceived to be behaving that way. What do you think does for the reflection against your race? What boundaries are in place? How do we treat these people? Actually, what can I get away with treating these people? So it's just for everybody out there, it's just worth thinking about that. If it holds true at the micro level, it will hold true at the macro level.
Mm-hmm.
It will be much bigger. We're thinking about it. Brother, I just want to say thank you very much. We're getting some feedback from some people. So thanks, Albert. Brilliant conversation. That's from Rec. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for your excellent and enlightening presentation. That's from Andre. So thank you guys for joining us. We also got thank you, Adek, for I hear I'm a therapeutic foster carer using PACE. A lot of what your guest has said resonated with my care. Thank you very much for Andre. We really appreciate it. And that's what we're here. We're here to serve the community. And I say this to people. For me, even though the focus will be on the Black community because I'm Black, I am pro-Black, but not anti anybody else. All of this is available to everybody, right?
Standard.
There you go. So do you know what I mean? So that's it. A lot of young people are suffering PSD and are reflecting their world. Yes, and that's it. And every time I see it or I hear people talking about them as if they're separate from us, to me that's also part of the problem. Because then they are hearing it and it's like we're disowning them. It's like we created their world and we're disowning it when it's like, no, they're not ours. It's like, how much more trauma does that create for that individual? Exactly. No one wants me. That society don't want me. My own people don't want me. What do you think that tells the individual? You know what? Exactly. F it. I'm going to burn down the whole thing. And I don't give a damn.
Everything. Even my own house. I'll burn everything.
I'll burn it down with me in it.
Literally.
That I don't give a damn. Because you don't care about me.
That's what's going on.
We just need to think about it. Bruv, one last, so quickly before we start wrapping up, how can people contact you? So your website, we got your website here. So vivitation.co.uk.
Yeah.
Pop on over to that website and let me just quickly see if I can show you. So just so everybody knows that when you hit the website, you hit the right website. This is not what you're looking for, which is that one there, and maybe I'll find it. And if I can't,
It's there.
Can you see it?
I can't see it, but it's there.
Oh, there you go.
Right,
There you go. It's there anyway. Yeah, I just went to do that. So
yeah,
just pop on over there. That's the website over there. So you just know that you're in the right place.
literally.
Book yourself in. Yeah, I would encourage you. I mean, it's your health, right? So, but you know, we've discussed some of these things, how they're connected, how important they are. One of the things that I've started to look at in my own life as I start coming out of a season and start stepping into a new season of empowerment, one of the things that I constantly remind myself of is Bill Gates. I'm not Bill Gates, Steve Jobs. Apple again. He keeps on showing up today. But Steve Jobs, and when he was on his deathbed, you know, look at all that money he had, the richest man in the world. I'm sure he would have traded some of that for more time.
Definitely, 100%.
Cool. So that's the website there, vivitation.co. Get down there. You might need to queue up because I'm going to be there. I need to get my scan done. It's time to get faced with this. And one of the other things, just so that I can confirm.
You know what?
Yes, sir.
No, go on. I'll say this after you say your piece.
No. You say it now, because that might change what I'm going to say.
All right, cool. I was going to say it was just what you're talking about with Steve Jobs, that money does not mean health. A lot of us feel, and we've got this notion that's been planted in our head that if I get more money, I'm going to be able to be healthy. Yes, if you have more wealth, you can, afford to tap in to more, health services, but money does not mean health. Why? Because you can have a lot more money, but still have the poverty paradigm and the poverty mindset, which means you're just richer, suffering with the same things. So it's health is a paradigm. And that's something I know I mentioned it before, but I really want to drive that message home to the audience. Health is a paradigm. It's a context. It's a context for how you actually perceive and receive your world. It's all about your world.
And all about manifesting. So health is important, whether you're doing it for the business route, whether you're doing it for a praying route, whether you're doing it for whatever route. The bottom line is you got to be around to receive it, right? That's the bottom line. It's like ordering Amazon in your way. All right? You don't want to do that. Okay. Yeah. And I'm saying this as much to you, the listeners, as I am to myself. I'm like, for real, dude, you need to figure this thing out right now. Do you know what I mean? Because where we're trying to get to in life, it requires health. So really appreciate that. So that's the website. Pop over to Vitavation. Boy, I can't even speak no more. Vitavation. And there you go. There's the email address. I believe that's your email address. Is that the email address that you want them to use? So
yes, they can use that.
Pop on over there. When you do meet up with Albert or you book something in, just let him know that you saw him on the Biz Talk show, right? And yeah, put your health first. So last question, bro, is one thing I'm going to say. Really appreciate you taking the time out. We only managed to touch base each other very shortly when you did my son's scan. And this is the first time we've had a full-on conversation. You are a very knowledgeable person. You also, and I'm sure many people will agree, you articulate these things in a way that it's easy for people to digest and to understand, but it shows that you're very well read. You can connect different concepts and therefore provide information to people that they need at a given time. What motivates you?
It's a great question. What motivates me is freedom. That's what motivates me. Short and simple, because I'm not usually short and simple like that, although I like to be simple. But freedom, when I say freedom, like literally freedom to manifest, express, create the life that you're deserving of, and that's what motivates me. And I came to that conclusion when I was kind of looking within myself, like, why am I here? They say there's two very important moments in a person or a soul's life, which is, and I think there's three though, but they say there's two, which is, the first one is when you realize you're alive. They say the second is when you realize why you are alive. What are you here for? Yeah. And then the third is when you start to act upon why you are here. Yeah. So in that saying, I asked myself that when I was, like 18, and then when I was about 21, when I was going through anxiety and depression and stress, and all of my identity started to break down because everything I thought that I would have by 25, 13 children, retired, this, that, none of it went according to plan.
Say that again. What number did you just say?
I wanted 13. I wanted 13 children, literally, bro.
Sorry, I know we said we're about to wrap up, but why? Why?
Because you know what it is? I love big families. So I just like the idea, like, when you go back to the tropics, people have bigger families. And I just love that camaraderie, brothers, sisters. And although I'm not an only child, I felt like an only child. So I was like, no, I want 13. Then it went to 7. Yeah, I had to kind of draw back.
You started to get a bit of small sense.
Yes.
Not fully, but small. Little by little. Okay, carry on. I'm listening.
Small. So
Small.
I started to draw it back. And then I realized, if everything went according to plan, and the way I thought it would be, I would have never come down this path. I came down this path because nothing went according to my plan, but there was a divine plan.
Amen.
So freedom, the reason I say that, because if you have freedom in your life, you have the freedom to be healthy, and claim your health. You have the freedom to travel, the freedom to grow, the freedom to explore, the freedom to express yourself. I think all of that is underpinned by freedom. If there's no freedom there, how can you create? And we're here to create. Whatever the audience, whoever's actually watching this, whatever your persuasion is in terms of school of thought, religious, spiritual, whatever it is, one thing we can't deny is we're here. If you want to say it's an illusion, it's the matrix, still, we are here experiencing something. And another thing we can't deny is us being here, we can make a difference. Just a smile in the morning to someone makes a difference. Just a message or a phone call makes a huge difference. So I'm saying, because we can actually be here and make a difference, because we can be here and make a difference, that is a telling sign that we affect this thing we call reality. And then if you go back from that, affecting something called reality or this canvas is also part of being a creator. You're in the process of creation. You're actually in the game of creating. So to create, there needs to be a freedom to do so, or you're not creating, you're just regurgitating.
I really appreciate that. There's something that you said there that for me is 100% spot on based on my own personal experience. So like I said, going through depression was caused by, breakup of a family, losing a business, losing all the things, material stuff and assets that I'd built up over 10 odd years and stuff. And that's what caused it. But it was actually, and I was having this conversation, funny enough, with a friend of mine yesterday as we wrapped this up. It was actually in that breakdown, there was a breakdown of the identity I'd associated around all of those.
Exactly.
And it was only when I had to let go of them, get through that, did I come out the other side recognizing, actually, I've got freedom now to recreate all of that, but better.
Come on,
create
bro.
again. So that's, do you know what I mean? And it's getting there. And I think it was Carl Jung who said, as a psychologist, that actually, if you leave most people within a controlled right environment to go through what we call a mental breakdown, they evolve. Their brain
literally
up, their brain grows, and it moves because we only use a small percentage of the brain, right?
Yep. Breakdown for breakthrough, we call that. In order to have the breakthrough, there's usually a breakdown that precedes the breakthrough. But what happens if you don't allow yourself to go through the breakdown? You will start to manage the breakdown and you'll just be above functional. So now you're functioning in your breakdown as opposed to going through your breakdown, and which means you'll be in limbo. You'll be static. You will stay there for as long as you hold on, which could be your whole life.
And another way to put that for you guys is we really do start to wrap this up, because I can feel another conversation starting here. It's a bit like driving through a tunnel. If the place that you need to get to or you need to receive your goods from is on the other side of the tunnel, if you stop in the middle of the tunnel, well, that's it. You ain't got there yet.
No.
And you're stuck there until you get out of it. So in effect, that's all this boils down to. Brother, like I said, I really, each time you say something or these conversations, I'm like, oh my gosh, that opens up a whole nother dimension. Really would have a love to have a conversation. And I guess we'll be here until Boris lets us out officially.
Come on.
Which could be, who knows, could be yesterday, when and whatever. But just as we start to wrap up, I want to say personally, thank you very much. You've
Pleasure.
expanded my thinking and also helped me to catapult some things in my health up to the top of the priority as where they should be. So I really appreciate that. And I believe on behalf of the audience, anybody who's watching live or may watch it at any given point, I believe that I can say confidently that you've been an awesome guest. You've provided awesome value, and thank you ever so much. So to everybody out there as well, remember, email address is up on the screen, and then also feel free to then pop over to the website. You can book, contact Albert there, and take your health and the health of the loved ones seriously.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me, bro. You've got a great space here, great energy. I felt very safe, felt at home. The comments I'm reading right now, they're amazing too. Yeah, man. Thank you. We'll do this again.
Thank you. Yes, and yes, indeed. So thank you very much to all the people who've tuned in. So Rec, thank you for your comments. Andre, thank you very much. Kay, that's very interesting. Never heard that before, but makes a lot of sense. Awesome. And God bless us both. God bless everybody. Really appreciate it. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for your support. Get on down to vivitation.co.uk. Reach out to Albert. Your health comes first. Health is wealth. And on that note, I shall see you again soon. Take care.
Vitavation.